going to be inundated, to talk about some things that in the preservation world don't get talked about very often, and that's when do we retreat and leave the former fish pond wall outline there to degrade and build a new one. And that's really getting to the heart of cultural revitalization and preservation of the life force in the fish pond, rather than preservation of the wall that defined it hundreds of years ago. And that's what I found exciting today, because I think if we can say where stuff is, where's the water going to be, and what are resources that we all value in each of our areas of stewardship are going to be affected, are there ways that we can, literally adapt by not, building a new one without violating a code of historic preservation that says that a reconstructed wall has no significance. And that's getting down deep into the pipe of my world in cultural resources preservation. But that's why the fish pond stuff is very, very, very exciting. So the science that informs it is, how can we accelerate that so we can learn as much as we possibly can about how these places work before we have to build new ones. So that was my piece today.
Great, thanks for sharing that, Marianne. Couldn't agree more. They're living history, right? These fish ponds are living entities that they're historical, but also well suited to adapt. Better than our built infrastructure, our roads and things like that, I think, and can kind of be a leading example, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's where the life force of everything, the attitude that we're going to take in a lot of things is going to grow. It's just a lovely metaphor for everything. So.
Okay, any other thoughts on that first discussion, questions, key, deeper thoughts on the takeaways from the great science presentation? I think I saw a hand up.
Yeah. If I may, hi everybody. Yokwe from Majuro, the Marshall Islands. I think that what was interesting was the combination of very modern and technological based science and its application in a broad range of areas, including areas when you have to integrate this technical knowledge to the traditional knowledge, the indigenous or the local knowledge. And I think that because the risk that we are facing for climate change are so diverse, it's only when we integrate all those possible knowledge specifically for a specific situation that we can move forward. And it's very encouraging to see discussion like this when you have people with very different background that are able to sit around the table and to move forward and to put their difference aside and to build on this difference. And that is extremely exciting.
I agree, thank you. I think maybe we have time for one more thought or comment on this, this first question, takeaways from the research and management talks. We'll move to the next question. Okay, if there's nothing else, maybe we can have a little more discussion time on the second question. So the second question was, what enables science to be actionable in your research or resource management? So what are kind of the best practices or your experience that has really helped bringing the science, the research to action to improve natural and cultural resource management? And if you don't have a lot of experience actually doing that, how do you think we should be doing it? Either way.
Hi, this is Jeff Danielson with USGS. I wanted to just say that, I think, a lot of good research or science starts with good fundamental baseline data. And, we have the experience of trying to collect high resolution data across various parts of the Pacific and helping to drive, like vulnerability and science applications across the region. Obviously, it's not always we can't always get high res data everywhere, but we want to try and sort of expand the coverage of good geospatial data, be it from LiDAR, be it from sonar, be it from other sources to help drive decision-making processes across, the Hawaiian Islands, the Pacific in general. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
Second
Other
that,
thoughts
Jeff.
on kind of best practices? Yeah, go ahead for actionable science. Go ahead, Marianne.
One of the things that's lacking, and I agree completely with Jeff, what they're doing is a real game changer and can settle that question of what's the area of potential effect. Is the what's next part is in the regulatory world, I'm afraid. All of these solutions in the national parks are going to come through programmatic agreements, through NEPA, Section 7, Section 106, and we are nowhere near having the comprehensive agreements that we're going to need to work rapidly, to design, to put together research design that's appropriate for either data recovery in an archaeological sense, the abandon or do more science in places aspect is going to come with a heavy regulatory load. I view that in these vulnerability assessments as a blanket vulnerability for our being able to do anything in a timely manner. So we're doing a lot of really good work on identifying vulnerable resources, doing the mapping, doing this detailed work that we need. But if once we get there, I've only got 2 or 3 years left before the water's coming, we need to be doing these things simultaneously. So some of us in the federal agencies are getting together just in an ad hoc manner and trying to create a pile of example compliance agreements so that we can, at a park or in a region or parks that have similar resource types, can know, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do when we have a high surf event coming from the west. I know exactly which sites I'm going to go to first, and we've done all that consultation and decided what the actual hands-on work is. If Phil Thompson's right, we have for Pu'uhono Ohono now until the early 2030s. So I need to put the toolkit together in that way now for the next manager. And we haven't got long to do it. So that's something we're trying to deal with.
Great, thanks for sharing those real world on the ground examples. Maya, do you have time for one more thought? I know we're done in about 30 seconds. Anybody want to weigh in real quickly? I think we can fit one last one in.
I'll just follow up on that and say, it's also having the resources, the financial resources to do anything. And I feel like a lot of times we know what's going to happen. We know the water is going to rise, but we're just watching it. And it happens and we scramble to fill in the road or scramble to save a turtle nest, but to have the resources to actually do something that's going to last us for the next 20 to 50 years, we don't have them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I would also like to encourage that there is a group within the government called the Interagency Working Group for Ocean Coastal Mapping, and those folks, and there is a way to put in your request for needing geospatial data like LiDAR and bathymetry, and we use that information to prioritize where we can try and partner, and we can try and bring together agency resources to collect priority data. And I'm the co-chair of IWGOCM for the USGS, and happy to help bring that forward to get coverage.
That's great to hear, Jeff. And that's a role PI-CASC would like to take, to help support more and more too, is more interagency collaboration within DOI, but also with the university enterprise and local government too. So great to hear that. Yeah. Okay, Maya, I think we should wrap up this discussion. Is that right? Move back to the main room. Okay.
Yes, let's go back to the main.
Thanks, everybody.
That was too fast.
Don't worry, we have another round of discussion, and Brad's going to make sure to encourage the voices that we haven't heard from yet.
Thank
Okay.
you, guys.
Yep.
We're not done yet.
Yeah. So I can show you, for inspiration, I can show you those word clouds real quick. Let me see, breakout. Here's the second one, if you can see that, just to get you thinking. Joint knowledge creation with community and users. Trust, I saw love at the bottom. This didn't capture it all, but relationships between science and managers, relevant timescales. But really, I just wanted to give you a chance to expand on your answers here, and we can just start to have a discussion. So we have a small group. So if you want to unmute yourself on what enables and on what you think enables science to be actionable, either in your research or if you're a resource manager or other, or any other thoughts you might want to share, and I'll be taking notes here. And I'll stop the share just so we can see each other and have more of a conversation. Anyone want to go first?
Yeah, this is Fiona. I can go first. Hey, Ruby.
Hi.
Hey, everyone else. I know not everyone, but almost everyone. So yeah, I was thinking kind of the same thing as others had written down, like the concept of partnerships and really understanding what the needs are. I think oftentimes it's the concept of coming in and, you know, from a science perspective, like, oh, this would be interesting to do or to find out, but is that really what the folks on the ground need? So really starting bottom up and talking to the community and the stakeholders first, who would then also ultimately implement and utilize the science or the tool or whatever is built. I think that's really key to me, I think.
Yeah, and Fiona, you're with, can you explain, I think everybody knows, but I definitely received one of your surveys for PI-CASC, right? And that's exactly what your organization did this year in terms of reaching out to a whole bunch of users on your like 5-year plan, like what organization is on in the next 5 years. And that was a great opportunity to just, you know, download, give information there. So that's a great example. So thanks for your.
We're trying our best.
Yeah, now you're gonna solve all of it, right? In 5 years' time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on actionable science?
Yeah, hello everybody. It's Andy.
Andy.
Oh, you want to go, Mia? Okay. Yeah, my comment was, you know, that the researchers connect with managers to see what's needed first, and that's the situation that we have with our permitting structure at Papahanaumokuakea, is that you know, research has to benefit management, or and also that the impact from the research is outweighed by the potential benefit. I do think that that's an important aspect, because, you know, there's a lot of great research being done, but whether it's whether it can be applied to management or whether it can have a management aspect is sometimes thought of after the fact, and then you know, then it's not as easily utilized. And also, you know, I come at things from the education perspective, and I'm always appreciative of when researchers include education components in their proposals, and in their, a lot of them have to do it now, but that wasn't always the case. But you know, being able to do webinars that are publicly accessible, you know, we have a huge curve to get over, learning curve to get over on all these climate-related issues and sea level rise and other things. And the more we can do on that front to build support for for any of these types of research through education, through outreach, through public presentations is always, you know, is always really great. And I mean, get really good feedback from these. We had a really nice one about sea level rise and the research that they're doing up at Lalo, French Frigate Shoals. And we had several hundred people attend that, and everybody was very positive and very, you know, interested and asked good questions. There really weren't any kooky outliers of like, you know, climate change doesn't exist, you're just making this stuff up. So, you know, I think if we're able to provide good information that's easily accessible, we'll, you know, win over people's hearts and minds on this issue and understand that it's a CACO thing and everybody's got to chip in and be a part of the solution.
Yeah, right. And the more we talk about it, you know, the more we generate. I think I just got a 4-minute warning. It's probably about down to 3, but I want to open it up to others. And if you could please say your name and also the organization you're with or what you, how you identify, that would be helpful too. Thanks.
This is Peter Landon. I work in Hawaii for the Native Ecosystem Protection and Management section of the Division of Forestry and Wildlife underneath the hat of DLNR. I made the comment that you know, for the science to be actionable, it needs to be kind of in the right time with the current management status and what's feasible, and the questions that we need answered. And that perspective comes from working in the natural area reserves in Hawaii for the last 13 years, and oftentimes having to defend our stance of protection against, you know, researchers and other land managers and, you know, our administrators and people who think that, you know, our pristine ecosystems are you know, are okay to be used to, you know, answer questions that aren't really related to management just for the sake of comparison, because we, you know, sometimes we find ourselves as the place that people want to compare other research to and things of that nature. And I always tend to err on the side of protection. That's our foremost mandate. You know, and I don't believe in spinning things in blenders for their DNA just to find out how many colors they come in and things like that, when you can do that research elsewhere. And until you've exhausted all the other places on Earth, you know, that are there to compare, I don't think you should knock on our door. You know, oftentimes we need questions answered that are controversial, that, you know, lead to making controversial actions in places. And, you know, people shy away from that research. They would, like I said, rather go and see what all is out there in the world and how different it is and things like that, instead of like really researching topics that need community support and need lengthy analysis to make good decisions that are supported by the community. So I share that with the group from Hawaii and from the natural area reserves perspective.
Can you provide an example just for I'm trying to understand, like, what would be an example of a research need that would be controversial that, yeah.
You know, anything to do with ungulate management. You know, that in Hawaii we have this these competing kind of influences where you know, there's game animals that aren't native that are threatening endangered species, and we can't ever work out the, you know, the politics of drawing the lines on the map where we're going to save things and where we're going to say that we can't save things. And you know, we don't ever get any research in support of that. We just, you know, get the research that says, you know, here's this thing and here's what you need to do to save it and all these kinds of things. Like, they don't take on any social or political perspective, right? Sometimes science has got to take feasibility into account and realize that there are some tough decisions to be made and lines to be drawn in the sand. But if we do that, then I think all can benefit and all can coexist, and we can move forward with some management that we're, you know, where we cannot and where it's lacking. Other examples, you know, we've had researchers want to install weather stations and things like that, you know, and it could have been on the other side of the fence, half a mile away, but they're, you know, insistent that it has to be in our area. You know, other, you know, spider research, right? That's the one I gave. We got guys like wanting to do genetics on Tetraganthera species, you know, and they've got like one dot here, one dot there, but they have to have one in our natural area reserve, you know, and I'm like, you could just saturate the map outside of the reserve and get back to us in 10 years, right? Like when we're at a better place and all of our things are in a maintenance mode. But right now they're not. Everything's threatened by ungulates and disease and invasive species and things like that.
So we've got 15 seconds left, so I don't want you to be surprised when we get cut off, but we will have a chance to regroup. I just don't know if it'll be the same group. So I don't think it will be, so it'll be more chance to talk in a few minutes. So thank you so much for all who did respond.
Okay, looks like everybody's back. Maya, we're not missing any groups. Looks like all 3 discussion groups are back. Yeah, okay. All right, well, welcome back, folks. I hope you had a good discussion. I know it goes too quickly every time, but I hope there was some engaging discussion and deeper thoughts on what we've heard so far the last couple of days in this conference. So what we're going to do next is go to 2 more mentee questions. And we're going to do something similar. We're going to answer a couple questions by poll just to get the wheels turning, get your thoughts going, and then we're going to go into another discussion, smaller discussion groups. We'll get a chance to dive deeper into these questions for 15 minutes this time. So Maya, so if you haven't already, you need to go back to Menti, menti.com, another browser window or another device. I imagine most of you are still in there. I'll go ahead and read the first question. We'll give you some time to respond. So what is the top climate change adaptation research or resource management need that we should be addressing? So we're starting to look ahead now. We'll kind of look at the past and present in those last 2 questions. Looking ahead, what should be the top research or resource management need that we should be addressing? And we purposely didn't put any particular time frame on that. It could be in the next year, it could be over the rest of this decade. But what's the biggest need? All right, starting to see some coming in. Develop retreating from the coastline. Manage retreat, 2 votes for that already. Yeah, we get a lot of discussion on that in Hawaii and I know elsewhere. Sea level rise vulnerability. Yep, that's what we're here to talk about. Great. Or geospatial data and visualization. Yeah, looking at how to make ecosystems more resilient for people. So natural resource conservation for resiliency, coral reef vulnerability and resilience, right? How does that tie into not just the coral reef ecosystems, but impacts along the shoreline and our communities and the coastal ecosystems? Identifying and overcoming barriers to implementing adaptation. All great capture this year. Give you all another minute or 2 to do that. Another 30 seconds maybe. Okay. Oh yeah, we can scroll down. We got more here. Thanks for the great responses, everybody. Nature-based solutions, buy out private properties and hotspot erosion areas. More about managed retreat. Integration of communities affected. I'm assuming that is about making sure communities have a voice in adaptation responses and the research and resource management. What assets can be protected versus moved? Yeah, great stuff. Okay, great. I think we can move on to the second question, Maya, if you would, please. Thanks for all the great responses, everybody. Okay, this one's gonna be a little different than the other questions. This is more like a voting kind of operation. So your screen looks a little different than the response screen that you're seeing in the shared screen, but I believe you got 7 options there to answer what are the most important next steps after this science summit? So we've gotten together over the last couple of days, shared research, shared management application of those research. We've talked about with some of the climate commissioners from around the Pacific Islands, heard from some of our science partners. So collectively, following up on this Adaptation Science Summit, what are the next steps we should be doing? And you're allowed to pick up to 4. Please pick 4 of the 7 options there. You can check. We use 4 of those. I'll start to see them come in as little blue balls taking up those options. Starting to see some votes coming in. I know it takes a little while to fill this one in. So we'll give it a little longer. Pretty even spread so far. Oh boy. I like this one. It's like throwing racquetballs at the wall, seeing where they stick. Okay. Lots of votes for communication of research results to local government and decision makers and community. Well, we got our hands full. We got to do all 7 of these, I guess. It's pretty even spread. Co-production workshops, researchers and resource managers. Well, it looks like the standouts are communications and research results to government and communities, more needs assessments and discussions with local stakeholders. And the top one was provide research and management opportunities for students throughout the Pacific. Great. Yeah, capacity building, bringing up that next generation of researchers and natural and cultural resource practitioners and managers. Yeah.
Brad, I might add here that the folks who are with us in the breakout session might have ideas for next steps that aren't represented on this mentee slide, and we definitely want to hear those ideas. So if you don't see the most important next step in your eyes, please bring that up in small group discussions that I think we're going to head to soon.
Yeah. I think we're probably ready to go then, Maya, back into breakout discussion groups. I think these are going to be different. We'll be with different people this time, right, Maya? It's just randomized kind of, yeah?
Yeah, so it's a new mix of people, but each room will have a facilitator. So I'll go ahead and open those rooms up.
Thanks. We'll have 15 minutes to dive deeper into those 2 questions. So yeah, like Maya said, if you have other thoughts or
development that's entrenched in some of these places. So I really think that is like, it's got to happen.
I couldn't agree more. That's a real focus of my research and extension work with PI-CASC and Sea Grant. So great to hear that. Others, this is your chance to possibly help direct us on where our science priorities go around sea level rise and climate change at PI-CASC and our partners. So any other priorities, research and resource management needs that we should be addressing, prioritizing, specific to sea level rise and resilience?
I really like the nature-based solutions. I think that, a lot of the local governments tend to, resort to Army Corps of Engineers, how they deal with sea level rise, build a wall. And so I think more exploration and research into nature-based solutions to show that they can work, especially for erosion control. I'd like to see that, but I'm biased, so.
Thanks, Romina. And keeping those locally appropriate too, right? There's a whole bag of nature-based options, but making sure they're research and applied appropriate in a local context, yeah. Okay. Maya warned me that we have 10 minutes total for this discussion, not 15. Is there anything else on that question, or should we dive into the last question? Last thoughts on that? Okay. Okay, I want to go to the 4th question then, the one with the check boxes and the balls. All right, what are the most important next steps? What should we be doing after this science summit? We've gotten together, we've shared the science. I mean, we've had our partners talking, we met with some of the climate commissioners and climate offices. What should we collectively be doing as the next step to follow up on this summit? And it's not just PI-CASC, but it's our partnerships as well.
Well, one thing in following up on Peter's comment is to make sure that you're out there talking to stakeholders, which in the case of many places means people with deep ties to the land. What's important to them to defend? What could they walk away from? You've got to start there.
Yeah, thanks, Marianne.
Yeah, I would say you got to plead with lawmakers, but we know that doesn't really work. So somehow coming up with a mechanism, you know, a set of guidelines or a set of rules so that a process can be cited that says you've got to move from the coastline, right? Or you've got to do these approved mitigation measures, and you know what I mean? Let that populate the map and make the decision so that progress can be made. Because if you put a bunch of people in the room, I just don't see it, you know, these hard decisions being made and change happening.
Thanks, Peter. I'd really like to hear from some of the folks we haven't heard from yet, and I maybe give you a couple prompts. You know, some of the follow-ons could be things like more needs assessment. I've already heard more discussion with local stakeholders, co-production workshops. Yeah, anybody else we haven't heard from like to share some ideas on that, next steps?
Sure, I can share. I work with refuges, the National Wildlife Refuge System, and I work on endangered species. So that's kind of my bias, but I think it was Lucas that said yesterday, novel conservation actions or novel conservation tools. So thinking outside the box of what has been either legal or acceptable, like moving species outside their native range and looking at how to do that because they can't stay where they've been. You know, the mosquito control that's being discussed also because of rising temperatures. So coming up with more options for on the, you know, natural resource side, more options for how we can manage our resources with everything changing.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Maya, we have time for one or two more responses, you think?
Definitely.
All right. Maria or Daniel, I'm not sure if that's the last name, or Miwo, anybody want to weigh in? It hasn't yet.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what, Peter, you're super right on. And also Marianne, you know, and also Romina, they're all also interconnected when we talk about nature-based solutions. I think oftentimes, you know, the generational folks of a place and the folks that are there every day, they see changes that are happening over time and even happening seasonally that we can be more sensitive to as we plan for managed retreat and understanding the difference between seasonal change and maybe a 10-year change, right? Like just because you go out once and you see something doesn't mean that you understand the totality, like what's actually happening dynamically, right? And or even generationally. And so I think Marianne's point too about giving voice to people who maybe don't have letters behind their names, but do have a lot of knowledge to impart and share and to inform. When we talk about nature-based solutions, or even I had never heard that was new to me, Rachel, about novel solutions. But also maybe what's novel to us might not actually be so novel. So.
All right, thanks, Miwa.
Hi, this is Jeff Danielson. I really like the idea of trying to provide opportunities for students for research and management to help expand the next phase of people to help, you know, address these climate adaptation issues. And I think that's great. And you know, there's a lack of that and there needs to be more of that. And Also, it is fundamental that people know always, follow up with our stakeholders and to engage them and to understand, what decision-based products they need, and that's all great.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, I know Maya's busy taking notes. Thanks, Maya. Should we be bouncing back to the main room now? I mean, to our main breakout room?
I think we can
Oh,
take one more thought if there's something that someone wants to expand on, or maybe a thought that we haven't captured yet through the mentee poll or discussion together. So something juicy to close out our small group discussion with.
Yeah, I like that. Any thoughts even beyond the mentee questionnaires? Yeah.
Brad, one thing that I noticed that we didn't, that I think that we should add, and I don't know how, is sort of that economic or socioeconomic tie, like I think a lot of adaptation is based on people, right? And I think with the whole COVID-19 thing and economic depression and, the #1 sustainable development goal is eradicating poverty, I think we could see a lot of movement towards, community adaptation if we do that, kind of, yeah, we're gonna like setting back, right? Like if we do setbacks, people are going to be homeless or they won't have a house. So I think we need to address those sort of like basic needs, or maybe they have those ties to the land that we think that, so I'd like to see that. Maybe I'm not articulating it well, but it just more interdisciplinary. I don't know how to put that in.
No, I'm just gonna chime in. I think you're really spot on, and I think there's also something to how we make space for communities to both define wealth and to define poverty. So it's right. We have what we think are measures of what a community asset is, or what makes for community wealth, but I don't know that there's been a whole lot of listening up to that point about how communities define what wealth is for themselves.
I agree.
That's a great point. I think that's the juicy point that we end on. And Brad, if it's okay with you, I'm going to close the rooms and bring everyone back to the bigger room.
Let's do it.
All right, looks like we have everybody. Hi, everyone. Again, I see some familiar faces, some new ones. We got a good group. My name is Ruby Papp. I'm a University of Hawaii Sea Grant extension agent, also with PI-CASC, and I'm just gonna be facilitating today, hopefully not saying too much. But starting with that, I guess that third question, just to be a little orderly about this, I will reread that. My notes here. Yeah, let's start with that. What is the top climate change adaptation research or resource management need that we should be addressing? We saw a lot of great ideas, and if you want to expand on any of those, then please unmute yourself and we will discuss, or anything else that may come to mind. And I guess we have 10 minutes, so they lied. Or if you want to, if you feel like you want to talk about the second question, which is, what are some good next steps for PI-CASC and others, we can do that as well. And if you could, when you speak, if you could unmute and say who you are and what organization, or how you would like, where you're from, just for the rest of us.
I guess, oh, go ahead.
Helene?
Thank you. I'm Hélène Jacolecombe. I'm a consultant with the National Disaster Management Office in the Republic of the Marshall Islands. The needs, you have basically as many needs as there are people there, because the needs for people in Hawaii or in Guam are quite different from the needs that we have here. But I think that the expansion of some of the projects that we have seen, I'm thinking mostly on Dean's presentation, to provide a strong baseline data is very important, but also to how to share this data to make sure that it's not only the scientists or the researchers that are using it, but a whole range of stakeholders. I think that could be a good place to start. Thank you.
So that was on the, well, the first and second question, I guess. Yeah, okay.
This is Kevin Sullivan with the County of Hawaii Planning Department. I can really only speak for my island and our current challenges, but we continue to have a challenge with the current Slorexa line and the underlying data and science in that, and how it doesn't apply to our non-sandy shorelines when we go to model sea level rises. So right now, the model that applies to our island, for instance, still doesn't have overland wave modeling, or the other, what was the other? There was a second bell and whistle. Yeah.
Waves and erosion and passive flooding.
Right, yeah. And that's the big one. So we're addressing some of that now, and you heard Ryan talk about that. But there's a question of, how far will we get? And what other shoreline types do we have that represent gaps, right? And I know that the state coastal zone management programs also looking at sort of like how do we address this regionally, and again this talks about the regulatory environment too, state, county, at these different levels. So anyway, that's my piece.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I neglected to tell folks that I'm on the island of Kauai, and we benefit from more data than Hawaii does, but we do have, several areas with rocky shorelines and the like. And so, that resonates with me too. Anyone want to comment on that, or have their own need or next step?
Well, this is Rich McKenzie. I'm with the Institute of Pacific Islands Forestry in Hilo, and I guess maybe kind of related to that, Kevin, is that, so I had a hard time with the first question because I feel like every island is different and every need is different. And so I sort of answered it vaguely in that the research, the work that we do is to try to figure out ways to manage systems so that they're more resilient, so that they can support island communities. So how can we make forests more resilient so they continue to provide food, fiber, and fuel, or coastal protection from tsunamis and sea level rise. And in order to meet that, I think, tomorrow's leaders are going to have to pave the way. And I think students getting buy-in early with these young leaders is the way to move forward with that.
Great.
And I think one other quick thing is someone had listed nature-based solutions, and I think that's key as well throughout the Pacific. So using nature-based solutions, using nature to try to increase the resilience of these systems. Maybe I'm probably overly optimistic, but you have to be, I guess.
Yeah, you do. That's a good point. And we certainly need more research on those solutions too, in addition to applying them. Yeah, thank you. How about next steps? Anything specific with PI-CASC, or what the organization should be doing next, moving forward with either funding or developing partnerships with researchers, or anything that sparked your interest based on the lightning talks as well. And I can reread what the next steps that had been envisioned by the conference coordinators themselves. here to, because those went by pretty fast for me too, actually. So here were some options, but we can add to them. More needs assessments and discussion with local stakeholders, co-production workshops with researchers and resource managers, communication of research results to local government, other decision makers, and community, support interdisciplinary research, long-term and sustained investment in networking with local stakeholders, better collaboration among state and federal partners to build climate change adaptation synergies, and provide research and management opportunities for students throughout the Pacific to engage around climate adaptation. That's a lot of a lot of things. If that sparked anything for anybody.
Yes, Ruby, this is Dean Gesh from USGS, and there seemed to be a strong emphasis in just even in the questions or the options about interacting with local stakeholders. So I thought that was really good. When you just read them again, it kind of struck me that some of those are almost serial. In other words, one choice was, it was something, I'm paraphrasing it, I don't remember exactly, but it was better presentation of research results to the local stakeholders, which is certainly important, but I would say that that almost comes after. In other words, the one about long-term investment and interacting beforehand, I think sets the stage for that. In other words, you could have a great presentation of research results to the local stakeholders, but if it's not answering the questions or the issues that are foremost in their mind as resource managers or implementers of policies, then maybe those research results really aren't that valuable. So the interaction up front and from the very beginning with the stakeholders seems to be critical, and then that sets the stage, because the research then, the work that is done, has its best chance of actually providing the information or the answers that are most critical to the local stakeholders. And then that sets the stage for effective presentation of those results at the end to the local stakeholders. So it just seems to be a proper order there. That I don't know if that's was implied in that or not, but.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think there was an ordering to this, but yeah, it seems like a no-brainer, right? That you would start bottom up, but it hasn't always been that way, right? So
yeah, no, I don't think we do, right?
Yeah, yeah. Anyone had experience with that? Or I know my other group, someone gave a great example of that very issue. So it's very prevalent. Oh, let's see, I'm getting what am I getting? Okay, we have, it looks like we're gonna get sent back to our rooms pretty soon, but any parting thoughts, any burning desires to share something that hasn't been shared yet, or echo what somebody else has said?
I think that I agree with what has been said. And I think that for this, the last bullet point, to provide research and management opportunity for students, is also a very good point, because that's one way to make the link between the research community and the local community where the students come from. We had those examples in one of the presentation where the project was basically led by a local student who was interested in seeing what was happening to his island. And I think that's exactly what is going on in different places in the Pacific, and that's also a very good point, in addition to the others.
Yeah, getting those students involved, getting more students, getting a diversity of students as well involved in the sciences is super important. And I know something PI-CASC is committed to.
And I think in addition to that is that the information stays on the island. Then, as a researcher, we go off to these islands, we work, and then we leave. And I think that building this capacity is like one of the greatest things that we can do. And I know, there are all kinds of opportunities through the university, but through the PIPES program. There's a massive Micronesia American Samoan internship program and the Hawaii internship program. Those are just, you know, a few of several opportunities, but I think that's the key, is to build capacity out there so we can start to work to save some of these environments.
Exactly. So I'm getting we've got 43 seconds. Yeah, but I'm really interested in kind of learning how we do that, even personally and professionally for me on the island of Kauai. Part of that, I think, is working through our local community college as well, because there's a lot of folks that do stay on the island and I think are interested in. So it's a huge issue and a huge opportunity, actually.
Funded internships. We need to really promote those hard. Yeah. No more volunteering. Funded.
Yeah. Exactly. Well said. Thank you.
Okay, looks like we got everybody coming back. Welcome back, folks. I hope you had some great discussions. I know I did in my groups. Appreciated all the feedback and really interesting thoughts. So the next steps with this is we're going to look at our notes from the discussions. I'm going to try to compile that and something succinct. I know there'll be too much to cover. I'll do my best to grab some of the key points that we all heard. So thank you all for participating in the discussions. Thanks to our facilitators and Maya for helping us run this. What we're going to do now is go back to the plenary Zoom webinar. And we're going to have a report out on each of these 6 different science-focused discussion sessions that we've had, these 6 breakouts. So we've got a couple minutes for that. I think we're supposed to be back in the report out at 3:45. So yeah, just a couple minutes to go ahead and log out of this and log back in to that Zoom webinar link that you've been on for earlier today. So thanks everybody for joining us and sticking around and contributing.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And
See you guys soon.
It looks like that link is in the chat if you're looking for it right now. Just make sure you copy down that passcode first before you click on the Zoom link, because you'll lose that passcode.
This is the same link.
You can either find it in your email or use it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Same
Brad.
one you used earlier today. Yep, right.
Mahalo, everyone. We'll see you soon.